Good evening, how are you? I'm doing a sit and talk in part because of the cold, but also other things got away from me. And I did want to wait and see what Judge Ho would say about the motions before him to dismiss the prosecution against the mayor of New York City. Let's take this from the perception of the judge. He hasn't said these things. This is what I would imagine. This is sort of a thought memo, if you will. This is the case you, as a person, could wait your whole life to judge. If you take the hard road and you make a difference, the stakes are high. The critics will abound. The outcome will be your tombstone. Win or lose, get it right or wrong. The decision must be made to find the facts here. We've seen them like we've seen in past difficult excesses by Trump, that the facts are out there. Even without the hearings, we know what went on. For example, we have the resignation letters of people who were too ethical and too firmly entrenched in following the facts and the law rather than making deals, quid pro quos, bargains with the defendant that has nothing to do with the prosecution itself, but to use the prosecution as a lever to free him from that prosecution if he'll do what Trump wants him to do. This is the work of dictators. This is not the work of a democracy or a republic. This is a work that is what Trump does almost to everything. He cuts deals. No matter what the law says, no matter what the ethics are, no matter what the decorum is, he makes deals, and this is one of them. Luckily, we get to see it in public, in the sense that people have submitted resignations rather than do what they believe is unlawful, unethical. Now, the decision, therefore, by the judge, which he did not make a decision today, that's not so unusual. You would want him to think about it, what he can do. And suggestions have been made that he find the facts, and I hope he decides to do that. That he should ask questions himself of the AG. Ask the Attorney General to come there. Ask the acting Attorney General to come there. Ask the acting Attorney General if he said, if you don't sign this motion to dismiss, if two of you don't sign it in the so-called public integrity section, then we'll fire you. We'll fire all of you if two people don't come forward. And they did. And they were wrong to come forward. Because if you don't draw a line beyond which you believe is criminal, unethical, unlawful, then who are you? What are you? You're a coward is what you are. So what will the judge do? Now, the judge is limited by the certain circumstances, but this is a case that invites the scrutiny of a judge to ask about the threat to sign or be fired, and to consider whether or not to appoint a special prosecutor. I think a number of these things should happen. I hope the judge finds it in his soul to do so. And when I say soul, I mean that this is reaching into an independent person who can make a difference to the nation, to the republic, because this is at the juncture of our Constitution, of our law, of supposedly independent prosecutions, that we do what's right. And if we lose that, then the question that was posed when the Constitution was drawn, and the question was, do we have a republic? And the answer was, if you can keep it. Now, let's move on, because you'll see a trend here. Consider, just in today's stories, consider the EPA. And as the cold and the fire come and go, and the air and the water are put at risk, Trump has refused to allow $20 billion of grants for enviro projects to go forward. Really. Now, the walk through our garden of facts, known to all of us as citizens, even in the compromised publications we now see, in which corporate ownership is encouraged to compromise the pages where editorials and news are to be found. But the facts are like on a Mobius strip, and it's a one-sided closed loop. But it can be compromised by lies. And we know that we are seeing lies to mislead. Now, when you make an argument like I just have, somebody could fairly say, what example do you have of that? And because we have shared knowledge of data points, the epistemology of Trump is all out there for us to see. And Trump knows his puppet meister Putin invaded Ukraine. But what does Trump say? Trump says Ukraine started the war. Now, who has been alert and awake and followed anything that's going on and doesn't know that the invasion was from Russia? And they thought it would take 2 to 3 days, and here we are at whatever it is, about 3 years. At the same time, what do we have Trump doing? He's putting us at odds with our allies on the continent, compromising the ability to support Ukraine, and directly and indirectly, therefore, supporting Putin and Russia. Now, when Zelensky says what he knows to be false, that's when they would be okay with him. Meaning, if Zelensky said, oh yeah, you got me, I started the war, and what deal can we make? But he's not going to say that, because he is a man of principle, he is a man who has courage, and he will act right in the circumstances. And we are finding more and more heroes day by day. And the question is, will they get to the fight in time to make the difference that's necessary? Let's expand into another area. We have the coronavirus, we have the flu virus, we have the fear of the bird flu. And Trump is firing thousands of workers from FDA and CDC. Does that make sense? Next time you get a chance, send an email or whatever and ask RFK Jr. what he thinks about the measles cases in Texas. There are 58 cases now. What does he think about those in New Mexico? There are 8 cases there. The instances of policy and executive orders and free roaming statements about Trump's, quote, opinions, all of them are creating an atmosphere of insecurity and putting our nation at risk. Luckily, these guys aren't geniuses. More importantly, there are Americans who believe what they have said their whole life, and groups are coming forward and fighting for that. There are farmers, there are laborers, there are women, there are people all across the country who are fighting for us. And that's making a difference. And the question is, when the dust settles in the next several days and we get a feeling of what the vectors of change are, will they be in a positive direction against this administration, which should never have been and now has to be dealt with, has to be fought, has to be resisted? Many people consider the obvious explanation for felon Trump's behavior and that he's selling us out. Isn't that what you feel? He's selling us out here at home. I've given a couple of instances today and more in earlier conversations we had, and also around the world with our allies, with Ukraine. And it's almost like he's saying, go ahead, whatever you want, Putin, I'll do it. What do they have over him? Could there possibly be anything that could shame him after everything he's been through? Plainly, the most obvious error is that Trump is trying to create an engine for the support of the few at the expense of the many. You and I are part of the many. We are not part of the few. Elon Musk and his ilk, with their bad judgment, unlike those who have good hearts and wise policies, Trump, and Elon Musk and Bannon are exalting the crash and burn and smash and take world, because that's who they are. Trump is an unprincipled opportunist. There can be no doubt about that. We can go back to 2015, and if you were a New York kid like myself, I can go back into my teens and know of stories and events and things that Trump was doing. He believes, that is, Trump believes in making the public serve his ends. That's not what the job is as president. And he doesn't care that it's at the expense of the public. But this has been going on a long time. I talked about the EPA a moment ago. What happens is we write legislation that say we're for clean air, right? But then we write in a provision that says, well, if it doesn't cost too much. And so the exception engulfs the policy that we said. This has happened before Trump is there, and now he's going to be doing it in spades. We must fight back. This is an historic and existential fight to see if we can keep this republic. Benjamin Franklin is the one who answered that question. Do we have a republic? You have, if you can keep it. Are we going to keep it? In this context, in the last couple of days, I've heard James Carville, that some describe as a legendary politician. And over the years, I have found him encapsulating in very persuasive and forceful language the principles of the time. He's lost his way, and I'll tell you why. I believe the biggest strength in America for change and for equal justice is the people involved with their representatives to fight for it and to force the government to give us what the Constitution and the Bill of Rights says is our proper way of doing things. So James Carville the other day, he said, about the Hill. The people on the Hill, they shouldn't get in the way of the public demonstrations. Have you ever heard anything so stupid? What in the world was he thinking at? I have always favored to fight for what is right and at risk, because if you're not fighting, you're losing. You can't make an argument and you can't win it if you don't make it. You cannot win the fight that you don't fight. I much prefer a more established international leader whose reputation is well known to the generations by his writing and by the stories still told and by the things we know and the principles discovered because of what Churchill did while he was alive. One of his statements about fighting was, and I quote, "If you will not fight for right when you can easily win without bloodshed, if you will not fight when your victory is sure and not too costly, you may come to the moment when you will have to fight with all the odds against you and only a precarious chance of survival. There may even be a worse case. You may have to fight when there is no hope of victory, because it is better to perish than to live as slaves. You can take the path of doing nothing. I know most of you, or maybe all of you, don't believe in that. Or you can fight for this nation, for your freedom, for your rights, for equality, and against discrimination and all the things that some label woke, which is the only thing that distinguishes us from them. Because if you're not woke, you're unwoke. You're asleep. You're hateful. Woke is where we should be. And woke is what we're about. And if you want to find the most woke person in history, I think Jesus would probably be it, even though I'm not religious. So I suggest to you, one and all, I hope that you found this interesting, but prod, push everyone, including those so-called representatives of ours in Congress, who are being told by one of the leading political consultants, going back to Clinton, that they shouldn't do anything at all. What world is he in? We fought against taxation without representation. So now we have representation, and they should do nothing for us to fight for keeping this republic. in existence, and all of the paraphernalia and benefits and history and statutes and laws and rules, and the people that we have made heroes by how they've served us and served themselves in office. So that's what I have. With any luck, although I'm told there's a big snowstorm coming, I'll be talking to you from the roads tomorrow. All the best. Bye-bye.